So Matt, we spent 3 days with National Treasury, senior managers in the National Treasury, working on some very complex problems that they are dealing with in their jobs. And we used the PDIA approach to take them through the construction of those problems, the deconstruction of those problems, and used the approach to develop what it is that they can do to tackle those problems. By implication, it appears as if problems are quite important, and the way that you construct the problems are quite important. I mean, why is that so?
Well, thanks, Neil. I think oftentimes we think that what matters is solutions, and solutions do matter. But when you're talking about complex problems, you don't know what the solution is. So the first thing is that any solution that you try is going to be only the right solution if you're extremely lucky. So our observation is that many organizations and countries spend a lot of time trying out solutions and then finding out 4 or 5 years later that the problem is still there. And that is the case with a lot of the problems we were talking about today. What you do know is you know what the problem looks like. And if you really build the problem out and deconstruct it to find out what all of its detail is, you're bound to find areas where you can do some things, and that everything you do is actually addressing the problem that you have. So we think that not only are problems real in the context, whereas oftentimes solutions aren't, we also think that problems, if you break them down, give you the basis of your entry points to do things. And the third thing that's important about problems is that in complex situations, change is only possible if you can mobilize a lot of players. And you mobilize players more because they recognize that there's a problem that they are facing and they need to solve, than by saying we have a solution. As soon as you say we have a solution, they say we have a solution too, and it's not yours, and you create conflict. Yeah. So we think problems mobilize, they direct, and they provide entry points.
So by implication, problems are context specific. I mean, what then happens when a development partner or a consultant, the expert, comes in with a best practice, when problems are so context specific?
Well, the first thing to say is that many best practices are full of good ideas that, if adapted, could work in places and could really make a difference. But as soon as you come in with the best practice before you understand the context and before you understand the problem, you don't know how to adapt it. You don't know what it needs to be adapted for. You don't know in what sense is that best practice not going to fit. In what sense is that best practice maybe going to create more trouble than it did before. When you force countries to introduce best practices like that, and they find out sooner or later that actually it's politically unacceptable, they don't have the capacity to do it, what they end up with is the facade of the practice without the actual functionality. So for those people who actually really like best practices, we think that you should be adopting this approach too, because it's the best way in which that practice could be adapted so that it actually works for the context where you're in.
I mean, this sounds like an approach that would work very well for CABRI. I mean, being a network that works with practitioners, where the practitioners are the ones that intimately familiar with what it is that their problems are, and also what will and will not work. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that one of the defining points about CABRI also is that it is an organization that moves between contexts, but everywhere it works, it pays a lot of attention to the context. It pays attention to the people who are there, it pays attention to the organizations who are there, it builds relationships, etc. And I think core to its mission is to empower the people in the context to deal with the problems that they have. And that's why I think that this approach is so well suited to CABRI, because I think that this is what CABRI is philosophically about and is practically trying to do.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you, Neil.